Trapped here in my room, no trace left here of you. Cold call, another person or two. Seems like I'm the only one home. Aligned with the sun, shadows on everyone. No reason to run, hide out inside. Just stay at home, so lost and alone. Be here, unknown, don't tell a soul. Bad taste, can't seem to get it out. Blank space where you shut my mouth. Filled yours with love to spit it out. I thought we wanted the same thing. Trust me, it's alright. Goodbye, now let me try to sleep. But don't care to say goodnight. It would be a lie, another fleeting dream. Trust me, it's alright. Goodbye, you never meant anything. You mean nothing to me. Just stay at home, so lost and alone. Be here, unknown, don't tell a soul. Been so down since you left, can't get out of this hole. Stay safe at home, so lost and alone.
Hi. Hello. Welcome. City lost last night, in case anyone missed that. Would you guys like to know what I did last night after the match? I went and built Lego. But would you like to know what I did this morning? You know, sort of first thing when I woke up. I watched that match again, from start to end. And then would you like to know what I did after that? I watched it a third time because I couldn't believe what happened yesterday in terms of how we played, in terms of how we set up, and in terms of just the overall general tactics of the match. Today's stream is basically, hopefully, going to be an all-encompassing and in-depth review of what's happened. The idea of the show is that you don't really have to worry about, you know, leaving that game with any second thoughts or, you know, what happened here, what happened there. The purpose of today's show is to hopefully be the be-all and end-all in that sense. I've also looked at a lot of data and reports. You know, thank you, Y-Scout. And again, I've watched the game multiple times. So let's maybe get into it, shall we? First thing to say, I'll come to the chat in a moment, but I feel like I just want to talk at the screen for a little bit, and then we'll get into that. As I say, I've watched it 3 times now, so hopefully I've got a pretty clear idea of what happened and what went wrong. Let's start with the lineup, shall we? Which was odd, but a lot of it was semi-enforced in that Haaland was obviously not available. Question marks about the fitness / stamina levels of, the likes of Kevin De Bruyne, Doku, who only just played a little bit of time against who's just played Newcastle. Now, I wouldn't have personally had that lineup, but on paper, that lineup could have worked. Emphasis on could have worked. It was still mental to start both Gundogan and Bernardo in the same side. I think we've now reached the conclusion that realistically only one of those two should ever be starting. But those two starting didn't necessarily mean that we were going to lose the match before a ball was even kicked necessarily. There was a way we could have set up those players to succeed, in my view. So how did we actually set up? Well, let's start on ball, shall we? Because I feel like this is the hardest thing to nail down. And I'll say again, I've watched nearly 300 minutes of that tripe. and I still can't quite fully comprehend or figure out what I've just watched. At times, we were playing a 2-4-2-2. Sometimes it was a 2-3-3-2. It was very odd. It was very lopsided at times as well. Asymmetrical, the technical term. And I suspect that this is a match where the numbers isn't really going to help us in terms of, you know, assessing what transpired and what happened. You know, read into that however you will. Bizarre. Again, the numbers don't really matter. What matters is the way that we positioned our players on the pitch. So, Kusanov was often just playing as like a right wing back. That was incredible. Sometimes, more so in the second half, it changed from first half to second half, but a lot of times in the first half, we had zero wide threat. It was mainly, our width was mainly Gvardiol and Kusanov. At times, it was Foden at the right wing, and indeed, if you have a look at his touch map from that first half, nearly all of his touches were out at right wing. And then, perhaps the most bizarre of all, Marmoush up top, which is like fine, you know, Haaland's out, of course he's going to be up top, and Savio. That was maybe the weirdest one of them all. Maybe the weirdest one of them all. It just seems so obvious to me that the only way that City were going to get any true joy in the match was by getting the ball to someone like Savio or Docker, he obviously wasn't available, and asking Savio to run at Mendy, for example, because Savio is a very good 1v1 threat. Makes total sense for him to do that. Savio completed 2 dribbles in the match. His average from the last 5 games has been 6. One of those dribbles was in his own defensive third. The other one was in the second half, and both were in the second half, actually. The first one was against Ceballos in our own defensive third in the centre. The other one was against Valverde late on when, you know, the game was lost. So, for whatever reason, Savio and Marmoush were our strikers. They got no action in that first half in particular. I think, if memory serves, I think Savio got 11 touches of the ball in that first half, and Marmoush 13. So they were not in the game. And this isn't a critique of them. This is a critique of how they were set up. And this is why the title of the show is Appalling Tactics. Because for me, Pep got it very, very wrong. We applaud him when he gets it right. We criticise when he gets it wrong. This is not the same as saying Pep out. That is a foolish thing to say, but it's also foolish to not act like the tactics were wrong, or at least not optimal, whatever you want to say. So there was zero. As I say, we'll get onto out of possession in a moment. But essentially, in that first half, there was no chance of us doing anything going forwards by virtue of how we were set up. We had, in the very rare instances where Foden was able to pick up the ball in the right of central midfield, for example, and, you know, Savio and Marmoush are being picked up by Rudiger and Asensio, what you need in that situation is your right winger to make a run so there is a ball to be played. Who was our right winger when Foden was taking up those right central midfield zones? It was Kusanov. Maybe one time he made that run in behind. That is not a critique of Kusanov. He's a centre-back. Why are we playing him? And it's not like a Gvardiol who is like this freak of a profile of a player who can play at left wing because he's Gvardiol. There is no right wing threat. And even if there is on that, I think it happened maybe twice in the entire first half. Nothing comes to it because he's not going to be able to take on Mendy 1v1, so the only option is try to cross it first time, and obviously it doesn't beat the first man, so it's largely an irrelevant thing, isn't it? I've never seen that before, where you've got like a centre-back playing out at right wing. Very odd. It just obviously didn't work. So yeah, so the attack was doomed to fail in terms of a setup perspective. We had three, I think I counted three decent goes at their goal, or decent patterns of play, whatever you want to say. You know? First one came through when I think it was... I'm misremembering now. I'm misremembering. There was what? Oh, that's what it was, wasn't it? I think Nico played the ball quickly into Foden. Foden then lays it off to Savio. There's some really nice, for what, like one of the only times in the game, there's some really nice small space interconnectivity there. It comes to Foden on the right. He plays a lovely ball to, I think it falls to Bernardo in the end. And then it comes to a cross for Gvardiol. Sadly, nothing comes to it. There was one more. Again, nothing. You'll notice that in all these examples I'm talking about, literally nothing came down the left side for us. We had zero threats there. The other one, again, Foden was once again involved, I think this time linking up with Marmoush, and it was a half decent, you know, getting into a decent position, but then the final action, but I think it was Gundogan let us down. And then the other one was from a set piece where Foden crosses it, and then I think Bellingham gets a good head on it, but someone's offside anyway. So those were the only three good bits of attacking play that I identified in that first half. Didn't get much better in the second half, to be honest with you, but we can talk about game state in a moment. So that was partly informed by virtue of there was no left-sided presence. Do I have the data in front of me? 1 second. Let me see if I can whip it out. Ha ha ha ha ha. There we go. Just bringing up the data. Yes, so would you guys like to know how much XG Manchester City generated in 90 minutes of football on the left side? Would anyone like to hazard a guess? Apparently we had 13 attacks down that left side. Would anyone like to hazard a guess across 90 minutes how much expected goals was generated down our left side? For comparison's sake, you know, in terms of the centre and the right, we generated around 1.5 on the centre and the right. How much do you reckon we generated down that left side? I will take guesses now. 0.2 says Joe, 0.3, 0.12, 0.29, and yeah, we're getting some correct answers here now. 0. 0%. 0 expected goals came down that left side. So there was literally nothing happening there. And again, this is not having a go at Marmoush, who was the left-sided striker. This is just acknowledging that the team was set up to fail, in my view. That can't happen. Especially, I know Valverde is a very good player, but ultimately, he's not a right-back. So that just seems insane to me, that we wouldn't try to do something down that side. There was one time where we went down that left side, and it was in a sort of fake counter-attack. Savio did well, brought the ball out, plays in Marmoush, but then Marmoush is 1v3. And all he can do is try to win a corner there. That was the only time where we actually half did anything down that left side. And again, that is not a critique of Marmoush. It's not a critique of Savio, Foden, whoever, in terms of our attacking players. They were not set up to succeed. It was an impossible... It's an impossible ask. Yeah? So that was us going forwards, and mainly in the first half. It changed slightly in the second half. But let's discuss now, I think... And actually, Pep came out, didn't he? Before we move on to the defense, Pep came out and he said that the game plan was to try to extend the result for as long as possible. So basically, what Pep said there is what we said when we saw like the lineup and whatever. It was keep the game tight and maybe get to like, the 50th, 60th, 70th minute, whatever. And then maybe bring on De Bruyne, Doku, Haaland. But Haaland obviously wasn't able to come on anyway, but we didn't necessarily know that at the time. Yeah, Formidable Centurions, I think you're getting the wrong end of the stick here. I'm still very much backing Pep, but he clearly made many errors in that match. What we aren't going to do is put our head in the sand here. We can accept that the best manager in the world made errors. In the same way that last season he made errors. This season he's made errors. Yesterday was an error, clearly. I didn't actually think I'd need to bring that up. Yeah, we're not going to put our head in the sand here. We'll fairly criticise. We're not going to say mental things like, Pep out and get rid of him. But there we go. So yeah, that for me was the incorrect approach with Pep. I don't know why he did that, to be honest with you. I could have sort of understood it if the midfield he rocked up with was Nico and Stones. Because that's as solid as it's going to get. And now let's maybe talk about the lack of solidity in that first half. Again, we'll get onto the second half in a moment. And then once I've finished up like the first half, maybe we can have a chat about why were we trying to even play like this. So we talked about the attack in the first half, how it was doomed to fail. We still were able to generate a couple of half-decent-ish moments going forwards. It only happened 3 times, but in fairness, it happened a few more times than I thought. The issue was it didn't actually result in any shots in anger, but the positions were interesting. Sadly, it didn't really lead to much. I think maybe one of the best ones was that one where it was Savio Foden out on the right. Foden plays the lovely ball into Gvardiol. Gvardiol sort of like makes a bit of a hash of the shot, just like hit straight into the first defender. Let's talk about off ball now, and this is ultimately why we lost the game. The game was over within 5 minutes, to be honest. It was then doubly over inside 30 minutes. There were 2 different issues for those goals. Let's address them now. I've just done a tweet, actually. So in case you guys want to know the context, go to my Twitter now and have a look, because I'm about to reference a graphic. And I've tweeted the graphic. In the first half, we played 4-4-2, out of possession. That's not a problem. We regularly play 4-4-2 out of possession. Absolutely fine. Real Madrid played 4-4-2 out of possession. Obviously, their 4-4-2 is a lot better than ours, but that's not an unusual thing to have happen. What is an unusual thing is what our left side was. Now, surprisingly, Real Madrid didn't really attack down their left as much as I thought they were going to do. And I think it was because the players themselves, or Ancelotti, whoever, identified pretty early on that City's weakness was actually down our left. Despite all the conversation and chat that us as City fans were having about, who we're going to play at right back, Vinicius is going to have a fields day, it was actually our left side which was the most frail. Why? In the first half in particular, why? Bernardo Silva was at left midfield. Okay. When was the last time anyone saw him play left midfield? I know he has done it in the past. That just seems mental to me. He hasn't done it all season. Now all of a sudden we're asking him to play left midfield out of possession. And who was his who was his central midfield partner? It was İlkay Gundogan. So we already know how crazy it is to start both of them in the same game. Never mind starting them in the same area of the pitch. Yeah? So our entire left side was ridiculously frail. That also meant that Gvardiol was left totally isolated and on his own to try to pick up, you know, Rodrigo all on his own. You know, insanity. The second goal is the best example of that. I have no idea, and we'll get onto the general pressing in a moment. I have no idea what Gundogan thinks he's doing here. For whatever reason, City are... In fact, no, before we even get into the second goal, let's talk about the first goal, actually. There is nothing inherently wrong with playing a high line. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. But if you play a high line, we touched on this many times on this channel, what you have to do is you have to have an intense midfield and forward players who are able to press aggressively and press high and press efficiently as well. There is one thing to press high and another to press high well. If you're just stood there for the sake of standing there, then you are doing fuck all, quite frankly. There is no point being a body there if you aren't actually engaging in the press. The whole point is that the opponent on the ball goes, oh my god, there's a player right in front of me. They're about to dispossess me. I'm going to panic and rush my movements. I'm going to lose the ball. Oh no, I keep drifting into the second goal. Apologies. No, so first goal, there is nothing going on. Now, so who were our two players who were being asked to commit to the forward press in that first half? It was Savio and it was Marmoush. Now, you can't convince me that within 5 minutes of the game, these players do not want to press high and press with intent. Yeah? You can't convince me they don't want to do that. We saw against Newcastle, these guys have legs for days and they are willing. Savio in particular is a willing runner and a willing presser. In theory, those two, as your out of possession strikers, should be fantastic from a pressing perspective. But they didn't. But they didn't do that. Yeah? Now that tells me that's an instruction. Why didn't they press? It's not because they can't. It's because they clearly can, and I don't know what's in their heads, but I would conclude that they clearly want to. My only conclusion, therefore, is that it was an instruction to not press incredibly intently early on in the match. Now, why would that be the instruction? Why would that be the instruction? Maybe it's because it's early in the game, you don't want to commit too many bodies forward, you want to stay in the match. Okay? I understand that. But if you are going to do that, then you cannot play an incredibly high line like that. And yes, Ruben Diaz does make an individual error. Of course he does. And maybe Ederson's positioning could be a little bit better. But you can't have one without the other. This is a symbiotic relationship. And if you are going to have a high line, you must also be pressing with intent and pressing high. I don't know, but my conclusion is that is an instruction. Because in the past we've gone, okay, you know, players like Gundogan, whatever, they can't press intently. But Marmoush and Savio can. So why weren't they? Is it because they've forgotten how to press from the Newcastle game, you know, which was like a space of a few days? Have they lost all fitness in their legs? Or is it because it was an instruction? I'm erring on the side of it was an instruction. And this is why throughout this show, I will not really be trying to dig out individuals as much as I can. Because even though there were some bad individuals in the game, you know, we've already touched on Gundogan, for example, ultimately they were sort of set up to fail. Again, you can't have Bernardo and Gundogan as your left-sided pairing. It's clearly an instruction. This is clearly majorly on Pep. I don't think no player had a hope of succeeding yesterday if you set up wrong like that. It's insane. So that was the first goal. Again, individual error by Diaz, but we touched on the high line. Going into the second goal, yeah? And this is where the game dies, sadly. 5 minutes in, you go a goal down. There is a world where you can score 2. It's not likely, but you still got 85 minutes of football. There is a world where you can score 2 goals. There is no world where you can score 3 within 60 minutes at the Bernabeu without reply. Maybe you could score 3, but you are not gonna, not concede at the same time. Do you see what I mean? So the second goal kills the game. Kills the tie, right? So how was the second goal scored? Now, it's lovely individual work by, Mbappe, Vinicius, Rodrigo, Bellingham, of course. And, I don't know if I said at the start of the stream, but obviously, well done to Real Madrid. They were easily the better side. I felt they didn't deserve to win the first leg. I felt a draw was the fair result. But there was no debate about yesterday. They were a lot better than us. But I still do maintain that a game was there to be had. Maybe we don't win it, but maybe we could go out fighting rather than this tepid display of losing 6-2 on aggregate. So the second goal, again, it's really good individual work by the Real Madrid players. But that goal, because when I first watched that, I was like, why on earth is my back four in that really weird zigzag Z shape? Why is Nico Gonzalez not picking up the run of, I think it was Rodrigo. I can't recall exactly. And then I looked on second and third viewing. Gundogan's positioning is bizarre. He's technically our left central midfielder. Oh, yeah, sorry, 6'3", my bad, yeah. He's technically our left central midfielder, and he was out pressing in like the right wing zone. And you know what I was saying before about it's fine in order to press highly, efficiently, and effectively, you can't just be there. You've got to be there and be doing something. But nothing was happening, so it meant that the Rudiger, who was on the ball at that time, is able to play the most basic. It's actually quite a good switch, but it's incredibly basic for a player of his quality because there's no pressure on the ball. Because the player who, in theory, in that moment is supposed to be applying pressure in Gundogan, because he's put himself into that position. Therefore, he's got to take that responsibility, as is that position. Doesn't do it. He can't do it. We know he can't do it. It's not a failing of Gundogan. It is a reality of his legs and the reality of his stamina and fitness and physicality. So the ball comes over. Now, all of a sudden, poor Bernardo Silva for the second goal is in an impossible position because he's now got to deal 1v1 with 2 Real Madrid players. Gundogan's abandoned him. So now all of a sudden, Bernardo Silva finds himself in no man's land. Of course he gets beaten. Of course he does. And then the whole back four is now at 6s and 7s. Maybe Nico could have done slightly better. But in fairness, I don't think he was anticipating to be expected to be locked down the entire midfield all on his own because his midfield partner is out having fun pressing out at right wing. And it is, again, great individual work. Kusanov gets megged. And Carvalho gets sent, and it is lovely individual attacking work. But you don't have to make it so easy for them. You know what I mean? And the second goal goes in, and that is a wrap. It's over. Because there is no world we are scoring 3 goals. There is no shot that is going to happen. The game is over after 30 minutes. Yeah? You're not going to score 3 goals. So largely everything thereafter is basically futile. So we shot ourselves in the foot again. Pep specifically, I think Pep was holding the gun this time. First leg, I felt he got it right. I felt his team. I felt some individuals let him down. This game though, Pep firmly had his finger on the trigger, and he was trigger happy. Like, I've got no more toes. I've got no more toes, or indeed a foot, after all the shooting in the foot that happened yesterday, yeah? They're all gone. I'm looking right now. Not even my little toe survived. And that was the story of the first half. Left us with an impossible task in the second half. Again, we were never going to score 3 goals without reply at the Bernabeu. Never going to happen. It was over. Quite frustratingly, we actually set up much better in the second half. Because he moved Bernardo to the right, which meant that we had Savio on the left, and now all of a sudden you've got Savio helping out Gvardiol rather than it being, you know, Bernardo and Gundogan. Gundogan was still at left central midfield, but at least it was Savio there who actually has got the recovery pace to try to help out. That made a bit more sense. Yeah? Foden went to striker alongside Marmoush. And again, that made a bit more sense from an out of possession shape perspective. That's absolutely fine. Again, sadly, it was too late. And if we were going to set up with those players, probably would have made a bit more sense to set up like that from the off. Sadly, it wasn't the case. And again, the game was over by that point. Same issues, though. In terms of nothing really changed that much going forwards, to be honest with you. Like, we still had this really weird dynamic with Savio and Marmoush and Foden. Very odd. And there you go. That's and ultimately we didn't deserve to win, did we? We didn't deserve to win. Now, do I have anything else to say about that? Do I have anything else to say? It usually says use a tactical board. I don't know if it's relevant right now. Yeah, so for me, the game was already done. We conceded 2 goals inside 30 minutes. So it was hopeless in that sense. And for me, there was just no world in which we could have done anything, to be honest with you. Second half, we sort of we attacked with a bit more intent, I guess. That was because the dynamics were a little bit better. You know, we actually had Foden taking up more central positions. We had Savio actually as a winger. You know, he's actually able to do a dribble against a fullback. Crazy, I know. But it was still a very nothing performance. And again, the players were set up to fail, in my opinion. I don't really know what more some of those individuals could have done going forwards. When you've got a centre-back being asked to play some weird faux right wing-back, when you've got your best 1v1 wide threat on the pitch, we're asking him to play as a striker alongside Marmoush. We had Marmoush who had no one to bounce off. No one to bounce off at all. We had no runs for Foden. We had... And I tell you what, it was in around the 40th minute. And I think that this basically just perfectly summarises what the players were thinking at that time. Because you've got to appreciate that players really want consistency. And they, you know, for the most part, and they want to know what is... they want to have established patterns of play. Yeah? But you can only do that if you play certain players in certain areas of the pitch. If you've got Savio as a striker, all of a sudden, all those lovely patterns of play that you've established, for example, in the Newcastle game, they go out of the window. Yeah? And again, this was a perfect summation for me. In around the 40th minute, Foden's on the ball. He's in around the right central midfield area, in just past the halfway line. He's on the ball, and he looks up, and there is nothing going on. There is no option for him to play it to the right wing because we've got a centre-back who he shouldn't be expected to be playing like Savio. We've got Savio and Marmouche who are playing in positions and in roles that they are not accustomed to, so they don't really know where they should be standing or what they should be doing. So they are just in the cover shadows of Real Madrid's midfield. And even if they weren't, the defenders are just there to pick them off easily. And we've touched on the left side where there is actually zero offensive play. So as I say, Foden's on the ball. He sees all this in front of him, and I implore everyone, go back. It was in around the 40th minute. Foden does this. Because he's like, what am I supposed to do here? There are no options for me. There are literally the only option that I can do here, and it happened multiple times, the only option that I can do here is to try to harness my 2012 Lionel Messi and dribble through the entire Real Madrid midfield, because there were no options on, and it happened continually throughout the game. That just for me was a perfect microcosm of the entire game. That, again, go back. It was around the 40th minute. Go back and watch it if you want to. It's so funny because it just perfectly encapsulates everything that was wrong about how we approach that match from an attacking perspective. We know there are issues defensively, of course, and of course they were the main issues. We conceded 6 goals, but we just gave ourselves no chance and no hope. You can't blame the players for that. I can't blame Marmouche. I can't blame Kasanov for not making that run and providing an option. He's a centre back. It's not his fault he's not good as a fucking right wing back, is it? It's a pointless conversation to have. You know? It's a pointless conversation to have. But it is a conversation that we have to keep talking about over and over and over again this season. It doesn't matter what players we put out. People want to, because again, I understand it's nice to scapegoat an individual because it's easy. You just go, take that player out, or just put all the blame at that player's door and everything's explained. But we've seen this season, it doesn't matter who plays, the same issues are here. Walker was the scapegoat. He's gone to AC Milan, and we're still horrendous defensively. He didn't even feature in the 3-0 capitulation against Feyenoord. Rico Lewis was another scapegoat. Didn't play yesterday at all. We conceded 3 goals. There have been times where Erling Haaland has been a scapegoat this season. And don't we miss him when he doesn't play? There have been times where Foden has been made a scapegoat this season. In fact, it was just after the Forest game, if memory serves. And then the Palace and Juventus game illustrated that it is irrelevant if you don't start Foden in terms of how bad we are going forwards. That Juventus game was a prime example. We were maybe even worse going forwards. You know, it was certainly on a similar level. It does not matter in terms of scapegoating. This will never be about one player. I don't know how many more times I need to say this on my channel. It never has been about one player, never will be about one player. It isn't ever about an individual, but if it is ever an individual, it is going to be the manager. It's ultimately the manager, the coach's responsibility in that sense. I would implore people to, I know it's not nice, if people still want to try to, pick up an individual's name throughout any game this season, just rewatch the match and ask yourself, why is that happening? It's not enough to say something is happening. We need to have a conversation about why something is happening. Have these players forgotten how, in the space of a few days, have our attackers from the Newcastle to the Real Madrid game forgotten how to attack and how to play football? Does anyone seriously think that? That's one example of many, but there are a fair few examples this season where City actually look good going forwards in some games and relatively bad going forwards in other games. Does anyone seriously think that they've forgotten how to attack and how to play well going forwards? Probably not. It's probably more to do with the fact that the setup was hopeless and Haaland was out, so it was never going to be ideal. But there was no. But for me, there was still a way. There was still a way, and the way was not to play our. In that game, certainly our best attacking midfielder out at right wing. It was not to play a young centre back out at right wing back. It was not to play our best right winger as a striker. It was not to play two liabilities in the left central midfield and left wing. You see what I mean? If we're blaming any individual, it has to be the manager in terms of yesterday's game. There was a way forward for me. Just in the first port of call is play your better players in their best positions. If you got Mendy, yeah, who is a potential liability, defensively, why isn't Savio being stuck on him? Why aren't we asking that question? You know, I saw that, first leg where we had joy down Real Madrid's left. Why did we just totally abandon that? Doesn't really make any sense to me. We abandoned that by asking a centre-back to be the primary width holder. It's not Kusanov's fault. It's the reality of the situation by virtue of how the manager set us up. So that is my sort of thought process of the game. I appreciate I've done a lot of talking there, but I feel like I needed to sort of vocalize my thoughts on that. Hopefully, that's what's it. Hopefully that has addressed people's concerns, and hopefully we can now have an intelligent and reasonable conversation about the match, because it was incredibly unintelligent yesterday, and I really don't want a repeat of that. So hopefully I've now presented the facts in a decent way. We can now maybe have a back and forth chat now about it. Let me just see if there's anything else that I wanted to touch on. I've made notes, guys. I made notes. Was there anything else I wanted to touch on? I don't know if I said it. I referenced the graphic, but nearly all of Madrid's attacks came down their right side, which just goes to what we were saying earlier about the fact that City had no left-sided presence out of possession with Bernardo and Gundogan. It got a little bit better in the second half, but it was pretty insane to me how that was the case. I think I've touched on everything I wanted to do. Yeah, in sum, we were set up to fail in a way. It was never going to work for me. We know the defensive issues at the club. The attack can work well. We literally just watched them destroy Newcastle. There was no chance of them being able to succeed or thrive or play well. And that's why no one got, if you were doing like match ratings or whatever, I don't think anyone would have got above a 7 out of 10. I think the absolute highest would have been a 7, but that, there are a lot of like performances in a vacuum. But once again, you got to ask the question, why? Why was that? Why was Savio bad in the game? It's not his fault. He's not a striker. He wasn't able to do anything. He doesn't want to be dicking around trying to dribble out of danger in the center of the pitch where we're more likely to concede a chance. He wants to be out there 1v1 against Mendy, but he wasn't allowed to be. Bizarre. Is there anything else, guys? Anything else? Oh, we haven't even started. So those are my thoughts. Let me know if you've got any questions. Let me know if you've got any thoughts on the match. Rate Pep out of 10. rate Pep out of 10, what percentage of loss was on him? Like, I've got to give him like a, I don't know, like a 1 or something, because I've touched on, for me, there is no world in which that we could have succeeded in that match. So I've got to give him like a 1 or a 0, I guess. I just think he got it horribly wrong. I know that he was a victim of circumstance with Haaland not being available, but this is ultimately, for me, on him. I thought the tactics were shocking. I thought they were shocking and made no sense to me. This game didn't matter, says Michael. It didn't matter in the sense of we haven't learnt anything. We haven't learnt anything. The same issues that happened in the game were the same that has been happening all season. So, in fairness, we haven't really learnt anything from that perspective, yes. So, I can't recall his name, but there is a very good centre-back up and coming. I can't remember what his name is. But he's like 16 years old or something insane. Do I think Doku can be world class? I think he can. Yes. I think he can. Appreciate attacking was bad. Defensively, Kasaf was quite good. Do you think the Walker type position is something he could learn in the future? Maybe in the future, but I thought defensively he was only okay. Again, I think I counted. It was very odd because, once again, Real Madrid barely attacked our left. I think it was because they just identified that our left side, sorry, they didn't really attack our right, and our left side was more easy to exploit because we had Bernardo and Gundogan there, whereas at least on the right, we had Foden and Nico and Kusanov and Diaz, actual legs and actual good defensive work there. And even Savio played as a right striker. I thought it was only all right, though. The match just confirmed to me that I don't really want him to be playing at right back right now. I thought it was fine in the context, of course, but my view on that still hasn't changed. And again, I've no idea what we were doing with him in possession. How would the game have gone if Haaland was fit and started? Well, he probably wouldn't have messed around with it as much. Maybe he would have relied on how he played in the first leg, for example. I don't know. Pep wanted Savio to be Omar and Omar to be Haaland. It's crazy if that was the case. I think going 1 down in the 4th minute means we never really know what the plan was. I don't know if I agree, though, Ayushi, because we saw what the plan was out of possession from a pressing perspective, and we saw what the plan was from a settled out of possession perspective, and we saw what the plan was from combining that with a high line. So I don't know if I agree with that. I think we saw enough. I know it was only like 5 minutes, but I think we saw enough. Yeah, exactly. So I've been told that he is apparently very lovely as a defender. Fortune for Puneet. Happiness is an activity. Not if you are suffering from clinical depression, but there we go. It's not a very good fortune, is it? Which place I think will be gone in the summer? Definitely Gundogan, probably Kevin, probably Bernardo. I'd personally keep hold of Kova just from a squad perspective because he can still do a job there, I think, in the right circumstance. Everyone but Pep has learned something, says Jim. Hello, Bailey. We as a fan base still not learned that until the summer we won't shift out the players below quality or without motivation, says Bailey. And that's the thing we were talking about earlier, wasn't it? We haven't learned anything. The state of play is still the same, There is a nice future with the players that we've brought in, and I believe these players are the future, But, yeah, right now there's still a lot of, thank you, Puneet. Just one question, Nobbins. When does the season end? It's embarrassing to see us play like this. Well, it depends if we get to the FA Cup final. When's that date? How much do we need to spend as ultimate? It depends on outgoings. That's the thing. It depends totally on outgoings for me. Madrid won't even win a trophy this season. B. You can never not back Madrid in the Champions League, even though they're clearly not the best team in Europe right now. You can never not back them. You get me? KB not getting at least 20 minutes was madness, says AI. Now, I don't know, to be fair, because by the time that you're sort of thinking, De Bruyne, Doku, I know Haaland couldn't come on, but in theory Haaland, to come on, in around like what, the 60th minute or so. We were 3-0 down. So like, what's the point? What I will say is, again, it's as much as I've said earlier that the second goal kills the game. Technically, there is a world where you can get 3 goals. Like City have done it before, where they've needed 3 goals and they score 3 goals. And different era, different time, whatever. But there is a world. I feel like if you were going to make a change, you make it at half-time. So I wonder what the half-time conversation was. Because, again, in theory, if you bring on, let's say, Doku, De Bruyne, again, don't know what the fitness situation is there. Maybe you can make an impact early, inside 10 minutes, score a goal. You never know what can happen there. If you were going to bring them on, you need to do it earlier. But the fact that we were 3-0 down by around the 60th minute, at that point, what's the point of bringing on Doku? What's the point of bringing on Kevin? Keep or let Stones go. Sadly, I think you've got to let him go. And I love Stones. And it's such a shame. I literally said like a minute before he got injured, oh, it's such a shame Stones keeps getting injured, because when he plays, there's no centre-back who can do what he can do. And then he gets injured again. You simply can't rely on that. Especially with a player like Stones, who, when he's fit, you want to be utilising him as much as you can, because he's so good. You want to try to build a system around him, because he's so wonderful. But you can't if he keeps getting injured, so, yeah. You can't have Stones and Ake, and hey, who knows what's going to happen with Akanji's injury situation as well. You can't have all these injury-prone players, sadly. How good would that team have been if we played Nico with Phil, 10 and Savio right? Kays, I would expect that certainly going forwards, we would have been a lot better. We would have been a lot better, Kays. Now, does that mean we'd have won? Maybe not. But I don't think we concede 3 goals, and I do think that we score, a goal in that first half, for example. I'm not respectful at all. I can't lie to you. Well, I don't have... This is a bit of a side point. Semantics. I don't have respect for anyone. Not full stop. I don't have respect for anyone by default. Do you know what I mean? You know when people say respect your elders? I've never bought into that. Why should I respect you? Because you survived for a long time. Well done. For me, respect is earned, not given. That was just a bit of a side note. But that's a bit of a life lesson with Nobbins. Honest assessment of how we get on at Liverpool on Sunday. If Haaland's fit, if Haaland is fit, I'll be interested. Should we start every single game? I would have Kusanov and Diaz. Why not? 1-1-5 victory and Roger Fett and Champions League qualification is the treble to aim for. Oh my god. Van de Ven, isn't he always getting his hamstring done in? Mad Hatter, I agree. We've touched on that, yeah. Big up to you, Roxester. Thank you for subscribing. Why Stone's always fit for England but not City? I don't think it's a conspiracy. Why I think Pep went with the 4-4-2 out of possession. We normally do that, to be fair. That's not an issue. We normally do 4-4-2 out of possession. It's either that or a 4-1-4-1. I don't have a problem with the numbers involved. This is why I didn't really want to talk about the numbers that much. The numbers were they were weird, but formational numbers, I use them because I find them helpful visually, and also I find it helpful when trying to explain stuff to people. Realistically, formations are irrelevant. It's more about like getting your better players into good positions and in good roles. The actual numbers don't really mean that much. But Pep didn't do that yesterday. I'll repeat. We had a centre back out at right wing back, and we had our best attacking midfielder out at right wing in terms of the touches he was picking up. If he was picking up touches in the centre, there were no options in front of him. We had our best right winger as a striker. We had nothing out on the left side. We had Marmouche I just felt sorry for all of our attackers, to be honest with you, because they had no hopes of doing anything. It's not Marmouche's fault that he did shit all in that first half. It's not his fault. For me, it wasn't any of their fault. It was just mental about how we were set up. Somehow we were able to create like 2 from open play and 1 from set play in terms of like half-ish decent attacking patterns, I feel like that was more by chance and circumstance rather than anything planned or intended. Yeah, again, he did fine within the context, but that game just has given me further ammunition that he's not able to play it right back ultimately. But he played fine, but I still think it was really unfair to ask him to do that, man. If Holland's out for the weekend, we should play Ake left back, Gvardiol striker. I wouldn't hate it. I like Gvardiol anywhere. Pep should play De Bruyne at left 8, says Lefu. And it's also just a shame about De Bruyne, you know. Like normally this would have been a game where, now I don't think he should have started because of the fitness situation, but the fact that that is a stumbling block now is so sad. And this is, sadly, this was the cost of us winning the treble, wasn't it? You know, he literally sacrificed his body to win us that treble. He's killed his legs for that. So this is why like he's an ultimate legend of this club. Like, yeah, is he having the best season now? Not really, but he physically can't because he sacrificed himself. He sacrificed himself for us. It's like Laporte. Laporte did that as well, didn't he? Just like playing through injury, getting a worse injury. Stats last time. So yeah, I think you told me about that, Mad Hatter. Mad. There's also a mad stat about conceding goals, isn't there? You haven't talked about our goal. Hey, look, it was nice for Marmouche. You know, it's the first proper glimpse we've had of Marmouche being a threat from free kicks. So that was nice to know. You know. That was nice to know. Side note, why was Steve McManaman, as I say, I can only catch up, I only catch part of the commentary because I'm talking a lot and I have the volume on low. Why was Steve McManaman so perplexed that Marmouche was taking corners? Like, he's a set-piece specialist. It's like, it's really weird to see Marmouche taking corners here. Well, it wouldn't be if you knew anything about him. That was just a little side note. Yeah, commentary is in the bin. Which players would I let go? You've got to let go of... I think you've got to let go of Stones. I don't want to, but you've got to, I think. You've got to let go of Gundogan. You've probably got to let go of Bernardo. You know, this weird... There is a weird... I understand that Pep adores Bernardo, but there is a weird obsession with continually playing him. I mean, it has, and I was defending him at the start of the season. I felt like I could see what he was contributing to the side. I've now reached the point where I don't really see it anymore. I'd get rid of Bernardo, I think, and that's so sad to say. I'd probably keep Kovacic because he's a good squad option. And also, you can't get rid of all these old players all at once. You know what I mean? So I probably would keep Kova just because of that. Again, I wouldn't start him, and we should still be looking to sign at least a midfielder in the summer, maybe even 2. But I don't hate the idea of, you know, you've got Rodri, you've got Nico, you've got new signing, and then if you need to, and obviously you want to rest some players, Kova can come in, you know, so you could have like Rodri, because Rodri and Kova isn't a horrible pairing. It's not ideal, but it's not horrible, yeah? So I think there's something it is worth keeping Kovacic. And once again, you can't sell all these players all at once. You can't get rid of them all at once. This will probably happen over a couple seasons. I'm talking about this season coming up. Maybe the season after. And the same thing with Nunes as well, to be fair. Whilst I don't think Nunes is good enough to start for City, he's proven that he can be an option from a utility perspective. So I wouldn't really be looking to truly move on Nunes. It's not as essential for me as Gundogan, Bernardo, Stones, maybe even De Bruyne. Maybe. Depends what happens with him in his contract situation. Yeah, very odd. Very odd Bengal, wasn't it? It's Dave. Keep De Bruyne for 1 more year so the new incoming lads can learn from him. Now, in an ideal world, I would love that to happen, but he does have to accept being on less wages. We can't have a bench player be on 400 grand a week or however much he's on. I think he's either our highest earner or our second highest earner. Just from a logistical perspective, I know I do sometimes also fall into the trap of, well, it's not my money. That's the case when it's like, you know, you overpay by maybe 5 million. It's like, whatever, who cares? But this sort of does matter because that means that we maybe can't bring in new players in terms of the wage bill and in terms of, like, you know, financial constraints. So there has to be that acceptance. If he wants to stay for one more year, and if he wants to take a pay cut, I would keep him. And I would use him as that bench player. And I would, as you say, use him to, you know, help the likes of Echeverry, for example, get amalgamated into the side. Maybe that's wishful thinking. Which says don't get people that want to sell Nunes. Can't sell too many all at once. That's the thing, isn't it? Anything with Rodri is not horrible. Very good point, Ayushi, to be fair. Yeah, he's that good. Keep KDB but sign a replacement. Says, again, I think for me it depends on the wage situation. He has to take a pay cut or go. I think that's reasonable. I think that's reasonable. If he doesn't want to take a pay cut, he doesn't have to. Of course, he can go do what he wants. He can go do what he wants. Yeah, let's get the likes up, guys. That's a lot of people for a post-mortem. Big it up. The shows have been doing really well recently. You know, the last few touchline talks have been getting over, 400 people on a relatively consistent basis. If you like the content, if you sort of like me, I know I can sometimes lose my rag and call people idiots, but that's because I've got a very short temper. Just accept all of my misgivings and my negative character traits, yeah? Adore me. No, but seriously, like the video, please. Thank you, guys. Thank you. I think you got to move on from Stones. Sadly, you got to move on from Stones. We've got to lean into what we did against Newcastle. You got to build around the players for the future. Now that doesn't mean that sell every single old player, but you've got to look at players who are either in their prime or players who will be here for 5 years. Yeah. The players who played well against Newcastle: Nico, Foden, Marmoush, Savio, Gvardiol, Kusanov. Yeah? These players are the Haaland. These are the players that we need to be building around. And we do need to just ultimately move on. It's so hard to judge this window. And it's so hard to properly assess individuals in terms of this season, in terms of our players. Partly because there have been so many issues this season, haven't there? There have been so many issues this season. And it's no surprise that I would say that Gvardiol's probably been our best player this season. But even he had a horror month or so when it seemed every game or every other game he was making an error which led to a goal. This is what we're working with this season. This is what we're working with. No one's been able to play to their true potential. Really. The closest you can get, as I say, is probably Gvardiol. And he was stinky for a month or so because he's being overplayed to fuck. Maybe Savio, considering it is his first season, but I know there's still so much more to come with Savio. He should have scored a fair few more goals. I don't think anyone's played to their full potential. It's because no one can play to their full potential. Whether it's due to the tactics, whether it's due to the squad building, whether it's due to the injuries, this is just one of those seasons where we've just got to sort of try to erase it from our memories. Let's see if we can win the FA Cup. Who knows? And then we try to go again next season with different players and a different squad. That's how I view this season. I'm not going to say this player's not good enough. We are, again, and if you're against reactivism, click the link in the pinned comment if you want a beautiful shirt signed by a boy. We're not going to say that this player who's clearly going to be here for 10 years or whatever, we're not going to throw to the Wolves the likes of Haaland and Foden and Gvardiol. We're not going to do that. And that's happened throughout the entirety of this season, by the way. None of them have been safe. None of them have been safe. We're going to be better than that we aren't going to throw them under the bus. We're going to accept that the context and the situation that they are being asked to play in is an impossible one. We are going to go, have these players turned into, average players or only good players compared to great or excellent players? Or not? You see? That's what we have to consider. Are these players being used properly? We know the answer is no. Even if they are being used properly, is there enough protection for them? The answer is no. Yes, there is a Discord link. I know if I need to update that one. If that one doesn't work, Zubair, click the one in the video description. And if you want to check out my beautiful latest merch design, click the link in the pinned comment. Thank you, Jack. It is a gorgeous design. It's my favorite one, and I'm going to buy it because I love it. That is the situation. Savvy has to improve in his finishing. I agree. But that will come with age. He's only 20 years old. He's only 20. I think he's only got 2 goals this season, is it? He should have got more like 5 or 6, probably, given the positions he's been in. But, it's the thing. It worked. Excellent stuff. Who in the squad is a world class? Haaland. Yes, Ayushi, you can. You're a member, so you get DM privileges. Yeah? If you're a member, you get to DM me. And I'm obliged to respond. What was I saying here? Yeah, who's world class? Or rather, maybe who will be world class next season? I think you're probably only looking at Haaland and Rodri, probably. But I had De Bruyne as world class. Maybe this season has illustrated that he's not really. Again, the parameters aren't ideal, but he is just aging. It's a thing. Gvardiol for me is teetering. I think he's very close to me saying he's world class, but I have a very, very high bar for world class. So for me, the only players I'm comfortable in saying are maybe Diaz as well, to be fair. Yeah, Jack, it is very subjective. Definitely Haaland, definitely Rodri. They're non-debatable. Probably Diaz. Maybe Gvardiol. I think it's probably too early for Gvardiol. I'd say maximum 3 is what I would say. This is the thing. No one should be turning on any player. Now, it is a reality that some players just are showing their age and they need to be moved on. That's not turning on them. That's just accepting the reality of their legs. But we can turn this to, why is everyone turning on anyone? We should not be turning on players who are going to be here for 10 plus years. It's ridiculously generous. Second City Saints. Can we get massive W's in the chat? I haven't read his message yet. It might be something I totally disagree with, but can we please get massive W's in the chat for her? Well, I don't care what you think about the comment. He's supporting me, so thank you so much for that, Second City Saints. Now, if I haven't read your comment yet, if I disagree with this, I don't care that you give me money. I will rip into you if I don't agree with it. But here we go. Here's your fortune, mate. He who climbs a ladder must begin at the first step. That is just stealing off Lao Tzu. Yeah? That is copying Lao Tzu, who said the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Anyway, let's get W's in the chat for helping support the channel. Big up to you, Second City Saints. Thank you so much, mate. Right, so Nobbins, let's talk about Pep. Okay, we have talked about Pep, in fairness to me. But here we go. We have $1 billion squad. I don't think that's true, to be fair. Plus $200 million spent in Jan. That probably is true. Yet Carlo beat him 4 out of 5 times in the Champions League with weaker teams. Yesterday was not that situation. Their team was stronger than ours. Why won't Pep drop his ego and adapt? I do agree with that point. Not necessarily the ego, but he should adapt. He's a fraud who just won Champions League in the last decade. Yeah, okay. Sadly, thank you so much, but sadly, this is a bad comment, I'm afraid to say. He's not a fraud. he is still, for me, the best manager in the world. Did he get it wrong yesterday? Yes. Yes, he did. But to suggest that yesterday was a case of City had a better side than Real Madrid, who had Mbappe and Vinicius and Bellingham and Rodrigo and Valverde and Tchouaméni and Rudiger and Camavinga chilling on the bench and Courtois, is mad to me. It is mad. This is a manager who's won 4 in a row. No manager in England's ever done that. Never mind Premier League history. It's English football history, and he won us the treble. He's not a fraud. Let's chill. Let's chill on that, shall we? Thank you, Second City Saint, for the support. But no, I can't agree with a lot of this. I'd say I agree with a third of this comment. We've got another one. Thank you so much, Huang. Hugo Viana needs to be very ruthless and tell certain players they won't be here next season. I'm not Pep out by any means, Nobbins, but he keeps on playing Bernardo and Gundogan in the midfield. No, that is a totally fair comment. And we got someone joining the Ultras Club. Ink, I think that means you're renewing your membership. Thank you so much, mate. Oh my god, it's all kicking off here. There we go. Welcome to the Ultras Club. You've become a member. Thank you, mate. Your random footballer is Ian Holloway. Yes, Ian, thank you for that, mate. Big up. Thank you guys for the support. Enjoy your perks. Oh. Yeah, Real Madrid down to week. Again, Second City Saint, thank you so much because you do consistently support the channel. Yeah, that is a madness to me. That is a madness to me. Sorry, someone might be delivering something, like, relatively imminently. I sort of need to be aware. Okay, I'm going to keep an eye out. The lighting's now changed because I've done up the blinds. How long have I been live for, to be fair? I feel like I've been live for an hour and 15. I feel like that's quite a long time. Shall we, is there anything else that I haven't touched on that we'd like to discuss? Please let me know now. I think that I've covered everything I wanted to cover. I think that hopefully we've now all... I'd like to think we're now all in agreement that it is mad to try to do exclamation mark Discord, Fabian. Maybe that'll work. Or the link in the video description. I feel like we can now hopefully all sort of appreciate, accept whatever the term is. Excuse me. Oh, that. I know that Twitter isn't a great sample size for, you know, intelligent discourse. I appreciate that. But my word, the amount of like City fans who who still have not quite got it in their heads somehow that if you are digging out a player, first of all, you probably didn't watch the game properly, but secondly, this is not an individual problem. Very concerning, because these views get received by a lot of people, and these are people with a certain degree of influence, one assumes. And people believe them. It's very upsetting, to be honest, because I like to think that on this channel, you know, we try to discuss things rationally. And like, if you're digging out, like, whether it's a defender, whether it's a midfielder, whether it's an attacker, I mean, especially an attacker, given the context of the fact that we conceded 6 goals on aggregate, just think that's an insane thought process. That's insanity to me. It's insanity. I don't quite understand it. I don't quite understand it. Of course, specifically, I'm talking about Foden. Of course I am. Who's not even my favourite player, by the way, you know, but I feel like I've got to keep defending him against mentalists, at least. Yesterday, we've already touched now. I don't want to cover it too much again. I don't want to make this a totally separate discussion. He actually played all right yesterday. Now, is all right good enough? No. But no one played well. No one could possibly play well given the context of what we discussed. The only player who was actually trying to take shots, the only player who was actually trying to drive at the opposition, the only player able to do that because of the setup was him. And for whatever reason, he's become the biggest target from most. I expect it from rivals because again, he's got the highest standards of any footballer. But it's just like people on this fan base where it upsets me the most. I think it's very concerning. Very concerning. If these people had it their way, then we actually wouldn't actually have him at the club next season. Because there is a difference between criticize. And here's the thing. I criticise him, for example, for the Liverpool game. I thought he was shit in that game. I thought he was fucking atrocious and horrible. Yeah? But that doesn't mean you can go, okay, why was that the case? And I touched on it, why that was the case. It was because we had no right side and we had Nunes out at left wing. So I'm just liaising with someone on eBay and buying something. I really hope that I've dispelled... I really hope that I've dispelled it for a lot of people. Look, there will be some people who won't accept reality. I understand that. We know that. Fortune for Andrew. Virtuous find joy while wrongdoers find grieve in their actions. That's the most horror spelling and grammar I've ever seen. Look, some people are beyond salvation. Left here with no further comment. Some people are beyond salvation. Doesn't matter what I say. It will never get through this. It will never get through this. I'd like to think that I've tried to steer people to the path of righteousness. Oh, gosh. Andrew, thank you so much, mate. Always supporting the channel. Van Dijk and Salah's fallen off. Trent stepping up, then he takes him off. I lost my shit after he scored. Disgraceful. Jota and Trent won that game. Andrew, mate, don't worry. There'll be a meltdown on this weekend when we lose against Liverpool. Don't worry about that, Sonny Jim. Don't worry about that. Again, some people are beyond salvation, and that's absolutely fine. Should I just start saying that now instead of like actually properly engaging? Because there's only so much I can say. I love Staffy, man. He's so funny. We're just talking about, you know, the people with cerebral issues. Again, Naveen, some people are beyond salvation. Okay, guys. Any final thoughts? I feel like I've said my piece. Sorry that this was basically a monologue for like the first hour or so, but I just needed to talk a lot. And I needed those 3 watches of the game to not go to waste. Yeah? You guys had to suffer with me. Yeah? 270 minutes of that shite. I was not going to suffer alone. I was not going to suffer alone. I feel like today's stream's been a lot more positive than yesterday. I feel like I understand that in the heat of the moment, people say certain things, and I say certain things as well, to be fair. Don't apologise for any of it. I'd say it again. But I feel like today's been a bit more calm, which is good. You know, cooler heads shall prevail. I'm very happy I did this this morning rather than last night. I'm so happy I built Lego last night. And I really hope you guys have hopefully liked the show. I hope you've maybe learnt something. I feel a lot better, personally. I don't know if anyone else does. I feel like I've got it off my chest, and I feel like we've had a really reasoned, positive discussion today, and that's made me genuinely happy. So thank you guys for making the show actually enjoyable, because I didn't enjoy yesterday. And that wasn't because of the game. I can take City not losing. I don't care about City losing, realistically. It's football. I care about dishonest discussion and just bad faith arguments. That genuinely depresses me. But hopefully we've done some good work today. Guys, I think I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to leave it there. What Lego kit did I start? It was my Ultimate Collector's Edition Lego Star Wars Millennium Falcon, which I built years ago when I was very young. Well, a lot younger than I am now anyway. It actually took me 2 summers to build, just because I didn't really have the... No, it's because I couldn't find all the bloody pieces, because none of the bags were marked. So now I'm rebuilding it. I've already done a 5th of it, to be fair. So, you know, my older brain is clearly... you know, helping out there. I've already done a 5th of it, and I've only had 1 day's work. So the idea is I want to finalize it maybe for this weekend. Yeah. I'm going to shoot off now. I think that we've had a good positive discussion there. I suspect we will lose on Liverpool against Liverpool. What do I expect? I expect us to lose. If Haaland doesn't start, I certainly expect us to lose. I just really hope we don't set up in a horror way like that. I'd love it for us to just play with... I would love for us to just play with joy. That sounds so fucking weird, doesn't it? And like so unquantifiable. But I just want us to try to play with some joy and some freedom and to just try to have fun in the game. Like, I felt like the Newcastle game just felt like the players were having fun. And I know that's a really pithy, unquantifiable thing to say, but I can't really explain it any other way. I want to see that. Now, maybe we'll lose 2-0, but I can take losing against a really good side if I'm enjoying it as a spectator. Do you know what I mean? If I'm still like, okay, this isn't the season for us, we're not going to win anything realistically, let's at least... do something to build upon for next season. I don't know. Guys, that's the show. Thank you so much for all your support. I'm going to go meet with someone called Rick. And he's selling me a super VHS player. Yes, guys, I still have my VHS tapes. I'm upgrading. Now I can play them in S-Video, which is a higher quality. Big up to Rick for that. Thank you so much to Second City Saint with a $50 super chat. Mental. He's knocked Cyrus off his perch as the biggest super chatter. Obviously, thank you so much to E-Ink, latest member. Thank you to Andrew, Huang Trung, and Puneet for your super chats as well. Thank you to everyone just for watching and liking as well. If you want to support me and get something physical, click the link in the pinned comment, where you can get Pep posters, Bold Fraud posters, and you can get my lovely t-shirts as well. There is an LNobbins one coming. I know that's weird. It's mainly just for me, but LNobbins is a show that means a lot to me. I wanted to make a shirt dedicated to it. So maybe you can get on that as well. Until next time, guys, thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you all this weekend for a Post-Mortem. I'll be at the match. A Post-Mortem for sure. Goodbye, guys. Thank you all. I clicked the button too late. Now this is an awkward silence. Goodbye.